And I think they're having a great deal of success with that. I'd like to start on that topic right now with Luke Perry. Luke, good morning.
Good morning.
It's a high-tech campaign that's going on out there behind the scenes that we really don't even know about. Some of it is dark and coming from other countries. But it is interesting how they've done a really good job of isolating every misstatement, faux pas, slur, everything that comes out of Biden's mouth that might not be exactly correct. They've done a really good job about exploiting that, and a really good job with making people feel that he has lost his mind, that he is senile.
Well, that certainly is the messaging strategy for the Trump campaign, and along those lines, there are detailed efforts to follow every public statement, which isn't uncommon, and try to accentuate what they think is the negative. And, I think we're going to see this continue in the months to come.
And it is interesting how technology is playing a role in that. I can remember back not that long ago, maybe even it probably was right around the time that Obama was running, maybe even his second time. But local campaigns would always talk about how online advertising is a waste. You're wasting your money. Don't go down that road. And then all of a sudden, Obama came out and really used the internet like nobody else had done before. And now, of course, you have the greatest internet user of all, and that's President Trump. It's a different world. It's a technology world that plays a big role in all of this.
Of course. I think Democrats have used the digital environment to their advantage, particularly when it comes to fundraising. And I think Republicans have used it particularly to their advantage when it comes to advertising. Digital advertising in 2016 with the Trump campaign was really tremendous and just did a much better job than the Democrats. So we're seeing an effort to replicate that in the Trump campaign in 2020.
All right, let's go to the 22nd congressional race between Claudia Tenney and Anthony Brindisi. I'd like to know, have you seen any polling? If not, I guess we've got this feeling. You take a gut feeling on how the two campaigns are doing. If I were to give you my gut feeling, which I'm about to do, it'd be that I think this is really, really tight.
I haven't seen any polling yet. I imagine the Siena Research Institute will begin their congressional polling soon. Typically, they have 3 polls that come out prior to the election, so this is ripe time for about the first one.
Yeah,
I agree. I think as it stands, the race is going to be very close, like it was in 2018, and it'll be interesting to see, particularly how different voting processes potentially impact turnout. I think that's a big unknown in this race compared to the last one, because even small changes in turnout can benefit one side or the other and have an impact on the race.
How do you see this? Obviously, when Claudia Tenney ran with the president, she won, not by the same margin that the president did in double digits, but she did win. And how do you see it? How do you see it here? It's a different. This is President Trump running for re-election.
Yes, I think in 2016 for Claudia, she was able to benefit from Trump's outsider status, and essentially ride his coattails as he made his way to the White House. I think it was much more difficult in the midterm, because all presidents' first midterms are often difficult for the president's party, and so she was kind of caught up in that in 2018, where political scientists anticipate that the president's party will lose seats in the first midterm election of the presidency. The question is where, and so this was a very close race, and obviously she lost her seat. I think it's a tough climate for Republicans, particularly House candidates, this year, given everything going on with the pandemic and the economy, and Trump's approval ratings, which have been steady, as you mentioned before, but have never been particularly strong.
Yeah.
So obviously that varies by region and district, but I do think it's a bit risky to premise so much of her current campaign on the Trump presidency. Certainly that is wise to some degree, but I think a bit safer approach would be to simultaneously try to cast a bit of a wider net and erode Brindisi's support among independents and moderate Republicans.
I want to ask your thoughts on these on the current run of commercials. I think people do understand that with TV commercials, especially TV commercials, usually a little splinter of truth is taken out. There's always a credit there where they receive their information, their source, and then they run with it. Both sides do it, but we're seeing spots right now that are Tenney produced, Brindisi produced, Party produced, and then PAC produced. There's a lot out there right now.
That's correct, and I think it's unfortunate in the sense that most constituents aren't particularly well equipped to sort through all those ads or that interested, so it's all kind of just taken as one big thing. But it does matter where the source of the ads are. I've long lamented the role of congressional committees in congressional campaigns. You know, both sides have these congressional committees that run really the most negative ads, typically, attacking the candidates on both sides, and I just don't think that's very productive for American government or political discourse. But what we've seen in the NY-22 is that since July, the most television ads in a House race have been run here. So we are right in the middle of the big wave of ads coming out, and I think what helps explain that, aside from just the competitive nature of our district, is that, you know, Anthony Brindisi had to deal with a controversial impeachment vote, and he began running ads early on to try to counter efforts to redefine him and cast him negatively. And so throughout this year, it's just been a whole lot of ads, and I think particularly with the pandemic, that's not surprising, but it's a lot to process for sure.
Yeah, it really is. If you, and I know you don't like to do this, but if you had to pick them, what are your thoughts? I mean, what's the job performance of Brindisi, and how will that benefit him? How much is the impeachment vote going to hurt him? And the rhetoric that's coming from Claudia Tenney. It is tight with the president, but she's staying with it that Brindisi is anti-cop, anti-police. He wants to defund, despite what Sheriff Mashel is saying out there in a local commercial.
I think that being a Democrat in a Republican district is inherently difficult. So certainly every reelection is going to be challenging for Brindisi. I think from the beginning that the biggest challenge he was going to face was congressional oversight and having to vote on something like impeachment. Lucky for him, I think that happened in political time long ago, and there are bigger challenges currently in terms of the pandemic and the economy. And being in Washington, he's in a position to bring home federal resources for the district, which I think helps him politically. So, you know, even though it's going to be tight, I think he's still the slight favorite to retain the seat if I had to make a prediction. And I actually think what would probably be more difficult for him in terms of reelection is if Biden wins and the first midterm in 2022 with a Democratic president. I think it would be very difficult for Brindisi to retain a seat under those circumstances. So at this point, I think he's in a position to be able to get by and survive, but that's only going to become more tenuous over time, and particularly if the Democrats expand their control of the federal government. What will
the 22nd look like? Have you considered this? You know, obviously we're having a shortened census, and there's a lot of talk that that this district will be merged into others. What are you hearing, and what are your thoughts?
Well, that's a good point. So that all depends on the boundaries of the district, assuming that we lose at least one seat, which I think we will, and maybe two, and then what that redistricting process looks like. And I think in terms of this district, what will happen will depend on who wins. If Brindisi wins, the politics at play suggests that perhaps the district would stay more in its current form and perhaps be redrawn in a way that would advantage Democrats. And then if Brindisi loses, then I think it's more plausible to think that the district would be more likely to be different and try to consolidate Republican support upstate, more north of us, where Representative Stefanik is. Yeah. But, of course, all that's very fluid, and we don't know what's going to happen.
Michael says, we're in the midst of the political ad pandemic. Election Day could be the vaccine. Let's hope so. And what does Election Day look like? Is it election week? Is it election month? From your political science experience, this might be something like we've never seen before with all of the mail-in votes.
Yes, of course. So over 80% of Americans have the opportunity to vote by mail nationally this year, which is unlike anything we've seen. So I think in some ways that's positive for American democracy, so that people are less at risk health-wise when it comes to voting. But at the same time, there are logistical challenges involved, as we saw with the primary, as many states started to move more in a direction towards voting by mail. So I think at the very least, the Election Day is not going to be a singular event. Early voting starts around the country here in a few weeks, and so the voting's already begun. And I don't think the results are going to be in on Election Day either, because it'll take time to process the extraordinary amount of ballots. And so it'll probably be a several-day, if not up to a week process before we ultimately know who the winner is, depending, of course, on the margin.
Well, in some states, they allow the boards of election to count, begin the process and do it in stages before Election Day. But in New York, they can't start opening up those ballots until Election Day, until it's all said and done.
That's correct. I believe about 30 states have state laws and regulations where you can't start counting the ballots until at least Election Day. So that's going to take some time with the volume we're probably looking at.
Your fourth book is out, Donald Trump and the 2018 Midterm Battle for Central New York. It's wherever you get your books, written, of course, by Luke Perry. Tell us about the book and what your conclusion was on that on 2018.
So my last book looked at competitive races throughout Central New York, the 22nd District, the 24th District, and the 19th District. And here you had three Republican incumbents running for re-election, as I mentioned, in a difficult climate with the president's first midterm election. And so basically it's a comparative analysis of those races and what happened. And some of the conclusions were that Trump in some ways has helped Republicans, right, by generating enthusiasm, but in local races like here in Central New York has created some challenges because two out of the three Republicans lost, and the ones who aligned themselves most closely with the president had the most difficult race. And so Claudia Tenney is a prominent example of that. So we're in a really interesting area for House races. 2018, that was the case, and I think this year as well.
Again, the book is Donald Trump and the 2018 Midterm Battle for Central New York, and the book is out and available now. Luke Perry, thanks so much. We'll do it again soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Luke is, of course, from Utica College.